morning, Jack Miner. I'm the Chief Investment Officer with TEDCO. Welcome to Venture Talks. I'm very happy to have Larry Tiffany with Medcura joining me today to talk about Medcura. And a lot of the things that we've talked about, we're going to talk about are doing well and doing good. And again, it's not inappropriate English, so we're doing good things, and we're doing well financially with early stage investing. And I thought that there's probably no better example of that than what Medcura has accomplished. And Larry, if you introduce yourself and talk about Medcura a bit, I've got some questions for you.
Of course. So good morning, everyone. I'm Larry Tiffany. I'm the Executive Chairman at Medcura. So Medcura started right across the street from here. It came out of the Clark School. More specifically out of the Fischel laboratories. And really it's an idea around using advanced materials to better manage human bleeding. And so what we've been able to do is build a platform, but around it, build a team and build a company. We have products that span the gamut of things from high performance first aid all the way to having now almost $4 million in grants from the Department of Defense to develop hemostatic tools for use in military and traumatic bleeding. And in the middle, there's clinical use, surgical use. So for us, what we're trying to accomplish is to build a company that has sustainable long-term value for both our shareholders and our team.
Awesome. And the technology itself is really targeted at stopping bleeding, whether it is topical or surgical, right?
Right.
And that's all I know about the technology.
Well, it's really amazing. And Dr. Matthew Dowling, who was the founder of the company, started the company, is still the chief technical and scientific driving force in our company. He and our team understood two things: that when you take materials that are adhesive, so sticky, they do a good job of sitting down and creating a seal around a wound. But that isn't really enough, because as your body starts to perfuse, as your body starts to push more blood out of a wound, you need something that's cohesive as well. So we make a proprietary modification to naturally occurring biopolymers, and that combination of raw material and our modifications allow our materials, again, to sit down and create a nice seal around a wound. But then as your body starts to perfuse, we create this really great barrier. So the really interesting part about that is not only does it create an opportunity for your body to clot underneath that barrier, but it also keeps bugs and dirt and other things out of the wound. And so we see more rapid healing, we see more clean healing, we don't see a lot of residual scar tissue. And we're now moving from using it topically, so for first aid and other cuts and scrapes and wounds, to more recently doing things internally. So we're now starting to do preclinical surgery, where we actually have thought-leading surgeons, neurosurgeons, cardiovascular surgeons, orthopedic surgeons come in and use our material, and to their level of satisfaction, be able to create a really great ability to stop bleeding rapidly. And as Jack said, also to create something that's safe and resorbable and is not going to bother you once the surgery's over and you're released to go home.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we thought was most compelling was the fact that, like, if you're on blood thinners like warfarin or something like that, that it takes days and weeks sometimes to dial that to the right percent and be able to go have surgery. I think this allows you to more quickly get into that. So we're excited to be an investor in Medcura. Tell me a little bit about the journey to get to where you are now. And I'm thinking about being in the Mid-Atlantic region, being medical device. What were some of the challenges that you faced?
Yeah, unlike some of the other, the Bay Area or even Research Triangle Park or some of the other areas where you have a really, really large life sciences community, including an investment community, here in Maryland, that's just starting to grow. And so for us and for all small companies like us, having help from local investors like TEDCO, from the state of Maryland, from the Department of Commerce, the Maryland Biotechnology Investor Incentive Program, working with the University of Maryland across the street, that has helped us move from an incubator on campus to now being in a discovery district, which is just about a mile and a half from here. So when you're starting early stage companies in a place like Maryland, it's finding talent, and then it's being able to nurture that talent and nurture your company. And so TEDCO actually was part of that journey in a couple of different places. Artie Santhanam, who ran the LSIF fund, was one of our very first investors. I think TEDCO probably put some of the, of the first $500,000 or $700,000 that came into the company, TEDCO is one of the first investors. And then very recently, obviously, increasing your position in our most recent financing has allowed us to move from a place where in the beginning you have a concept, you have intellectual property, you have an idea, and you have a little bit of data, and you believe in yourself, and you believe that you can build something that's valuable, sustainable, and useful for society. And we've shown that we can do that. And now we want to just layer additional, more lucrative opportunities on top of that. So it really is a community. It's a Maryland community. And we've been very, very fortunate. Most of the people that work for me live in and around Maryland. And so it's very, very important for us that as we build our company, we continue to have these kind of relationships with groups like TEDCO and, again, Department of Commerce and others.
Tell me about the battle for talent and what that means to you, formerly as the CEO and now as chairman. You know, what do you focus on in trying to attract talent to an early stage company?
Yeah, it's always difficult because there's what we do in the end is fairly niche. So you're really trying to find the kind of people who have seen the movie before. They've taken a company like this. Our new CEO, Jim Buck, has been part of a company that has been able to develop a surgical hemostat, develop that hemostat, get the hemostat approved by a regulatory agency, and then sell that company for almost $400 million to J&J. On the other side of the coin, we have a technical need. And so finding those really high quality, especially young engineers and the like, we've had a great opportunity to bring people literally right out of their junior and senior year at the University of Maryland. They come, they intern for us for sometimes summer, sometimes 3 or 4 semesters, and then bring them on board. So you recruit differently slightly for different roles. And what we've found is that we're now, to find the kind of talent that we need, it's not just looking in Maryland. It's looking outside of Maryland and starting to bring people's ability, whether they move to Maryland or not, but bring their talents to really support us.
Is there, what percentage of the jobs do you have that are in the lab versus could be done remotely?
Yeah, I'd say we're probably 50-50. A lot of what we have to do, of course, is make materials, evaluate materials, understand how to make materials better. And so we do have a pretty large technical team, again, in the Discovery District. But as we grow, we haven't even done our press release on this, but we just brought on a Senior Vice President of Business Development. Steve Ford has worked for Baxter Biosurgery, worked for J&J Ethicon, he's worked for Bard Davol. So his experience set is not just merely in medical devices or implantable medical devices. He has developed and led the commercialization of a number of surgical hemostats. So what's really exciting for us, I think, as a team is we're able to recruit that kind of talent into our little Maryland startup. So
yeah. So if you look back at all the things that you've done, FDA regulatory pathway, the battle for talent, fundraising, which of those 3 are the biggest challenge for you? And you can't say all.
Raising capital is always difficult because in the beginning you have to find people who believe in a vision. You don't you don't have enough data, you don't have enough time, you don't really have your products completely ready for prime time, but they're good enough. And you start to build that kind of the center of the snowball, and then you build around it. And so certainly, the regulators are always, it's always a challenge, but really it's being able to put and find the kind of investors. TEDCO is a good example of groups that will come in and then not just put one investment in a company, but continue to support it through its growth.
Yeah, and I think that's a good segue to why we're here. Largely we're here because of the SSBCI, the State Small Business Credit Initiative, funding from the Department of Treasury, and we just made an investment in Medcura. And you brought up the point that Artie from MII invested from TEDCO early on. Tell me more about what your experience has been with TEDCO.
Yeah, it's again, we've spanned the period from our very first fundraise to the most current, and so our relationship with TEDCO through that has there's parts of it that have been great. The support, this was the original support from Artie, the more recent support from the MVF fund and the like. On the flip side, we are required on a quarterly basis to provide an incredible amount of information. And we're a fairly sophisticated group. We have fairly sophisticated operators. I have a CFO who's raised over $1 billion in public funds. So when I think about it being difficult for us at times, when you think about then moving that down to people who are really, especially people who are the typical founders, are not guys like me. They're more guys like Dr. Dowling, right? They're people who have an idea and they have a technology and they're trying to move it forward. So I would say that the weight of that is a little bit of a challenge, and I think that having that ability to kind of ask the companies what would be more helpful, doing it annually instead of doing it quarterly would make a huge difference.
Right.
So our relationship with TEDCO has been really valuable in another way, which is the kind of the stamp of approval you get from, and you and I were talking about this last night. It's a institutional, albeit a little bit different than a venture fund, but it's an institutional fund that does significant diligence, is thoughtful about its investments, and so having TEDCO invest the first round galvanized a larger round, and certainly, as you and I talked about right at the end of May, this opportunity through the program that you were just describing has galvanized this fundraise. So those events are really, really important, because as an early stage company, you can always meet lots of people who are interested in you.
Yeah.
But it's actually taking their checkbooks out and writing that check, starting that galvanizing that process is really important.
Let's kind of nerd out on the SSBCI thing for a minute, because I think it's important laying the groundwork going forward. And again, we talked about this. Very likely funding is going to dry up over the next few years. And the timing, in my opinion, couldn't be more perfect for SSBCI funding to come in across the country for people to deploy. And I look at what Medcura did, what you did in this round of funding, and this promise of a check and what it did to get other investors involved. Staying clear of any securities issues, tell me about that as much as you can, because, and again, it was like, how did this Department of Treasury investment galvanize all the investors?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great story. We laugh about it a little bit at the company. We had just hired our new CEO, Jim Buck, and we were meeting with our largest investors. And one of the very first phone calls that got set up on our schedule was a talk with Jack and Bill Collier. And we got on the phone with them, and we were, Jim was expressing his excitement about coming out of the company, his vision of the future, our shared vision of how we're going to build Medcura. And at the end of that discussion, Jack said, there might be an opportunity, but we're going to have to move pretty quickly. And you kind of laid out what that might look like. And we got off the phone, and I looked at Jim, and we said, I guess we better get busy. So from that day, which was literally a few days before Memorial Day, between that day and today, which is, I mean, you're looking at, what to call it, less than 90 days. It's a little over 60 days. We've been able to raise a significant amount of money. And again, but it was that offer to say, if you do this, we will support your activities. And that helps you create urgency, it helps you create interest. And I'd say without that, we would have still raised money, but it would have taken longer, and I think the quantum would have been lower.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, and I want to come back to the reporting requirement that you brought earlier, because these funds also come with strings attached, right? Some additional reporting requirements. I think that anyone who's receiving the SSBCI funding is trying to streamline that the best we can. But it is economic development dollars, and it is to create companies and to create jobs, and that's the purpose. So we have to get the report back on that. But your continued feedback on how we can improve that, streamline that, annually makes sense to me. Hint, hint to legislators. So I think I guess where I want to give you an opportunity to make some recommendations to people who've gone down your path or starting to go down your path. What are things that you may have done differently? What are things that you'd like to do more of?
Yeah, I think the one thing about building these early stage companies is you have to have an unquestionable, unwavering belief, because stuff goes wrong every single day. And you have to learn to trust your team, because one of the things that I'm trying to get better at is being able to distribute out those responsibilities. Because look, when you're in a small company, there's a lot to do, and it's very easy to just say, well, much easier for me to do that than to explain to somebody else what you want done and the like. But you don't get the distribution of either responsibility or understanding of what you're trying to do strategically. So I think that it's really, really important when you bring people on, it's creating a culture, and it's trust, and what we try to do is, everybody has a voice, everybody has the ability to question strategy, to suggest strategy, to suggest tactics. But then once that decision is made, you have to let people, do their job and perform to the metrics, you set. So that's maybe a simple and very obvious. Of course, it's all about people. I think the other thing that we might have done a little bit differently is as we had a regulatory strategy where we used the external hemostatic products as a way to really kind of create a foundation for internal implantable products. And I think that we were very conscious of that, and we were very deliberate in how we did that. I look back and I'd say we probably could have taken a little bit more of a dual path earlier on strategically. I think that would have maybe accelerated the growth curve a bit. And then I'd say the other thing is bringing it just over the last 6 months, we've pretty much doubled in size in terms of our team, both our technical team and our senior team. And we did a really good job early on of bringing on board members, bringing in people who really did understand the pathway that we were going to go through, not just from the regulatory and development perspective, but the commercial perspective. And so that's now become, Steve Ford is an example. Although Steve just came on full-time, we've been working with Steve as a consultant for, almost 4 years.
Yeah.
So he planted seeds all along the way that now he's almost harvesting himself. So those, when I think back, those set of experiences really are what has helped us, get to be, an overnight success 10 years in the making.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? I still look at the talent issue as something that's most compelling for anybody who has employees. And I think that any tricks to attract people to early stage company equity.
Of course, as the person who is responsible for running the business, you try to think about all kinds of different ways to incentivize them. What we find a lot is doing cool stuff, right? That our military program is a great example. In the end, when I talk to investors like I did to you, we make one promise, which is we are going to continue to put part of our effort into developing life-saving products. However, I'm not going to ask you to pay for it. That money comes from a non-dilutive source that helps support it. But without having that program, without being able to really challenge ourselves the way we have to for military-grade bleeding, I think it's one of those things that our team just loves to do.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture, and I think it's allowing people to do things that are a bit out of the box, that are really hard, while then on the almost the same day you say, so we have another order for CVS, and we got to make that too, right? And that has to be mind-numbingly reproducible. But if we do both, we can provide an opportunity for people to have a more well-rounded professional career.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you very much, Larry, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack.
And thank you, Larry. And thank you for joining me for the very first Venture Talks that was in front of people. Thank you.